Hi, Mark Whiteman here with my second video for Draken Games. Thanks to those of you who watched the first one, and especially those of you who subscribed. I'd like to give a mention to Sapper Joe, first person to subscribe. Thank you very much. Omen Akamaru, Lone Jedi 70, John Wilson, and Comet Rider 73. Thanks, guys. Thanks for subscribing. My kids tell me that's a shout out, so you've been shouted out at, I guess. Quite a contrast from my first video presentation, which was about my most recent game, which is a small hex encounter war game. This is about my oldest publication, and it's a solo game book called Last Stand at Kirrinbahr. Let me just put the cover up whilst I'm talking there. There we have it. This came out in 2006. It actually goes back a long time before then. I started working on this in the 80s when I used to read and play the fighting fantasy game books quite a lot. And I thought, you know what? I think maybe I could have a go at this. Let's see what I can do. And I created Last Stand at Kirrinbahr, which was very old school. Wrote it out longhand in a notebook, shared it between friends. It seemed to go down quite well. It seemed quite popular. Um, Sadly, it got lost in the post, which was quite sad because a lot of work had gone into it. But there you go. I had kept all my original notes, and I'd kept my diagrams and maps, etc., which I guess is like a 1980s version of doing a backup. So they sat in a drawer for a long time, and I found them again. And I thought, well, write it again, shall I? And so I did, and it came out in 2006 as Last Stand at Kirrinbahr. The interweb had happened since the first version, so now I was able to offer it for download, and I still do. Okay, it's based very, very closely on fighting fantasy rules, which a lot of you will be familiar with, and are very easy to pick up if you're not. So let's just have a look at the prologue, because this is something that I think gives an idea of the setting and the situation that the characters find themselves in. I'll just let you absorb the Shakespearean majesty of my writing there whilst I talk. You are the captain of the guard of a city called Kellandorn, which has just fallen. It's just been overrun by a nasty reptilian type of species called the Skaturish, who come from the Darklands. So, obviously they're baddies. The clue's in the name, isn't it? And you and some colleagues are fleeing in a not very seaworthy boat, trying to get away from the Skaturish, trying to find some sort of way to make a stand against the Skaturish who are pursuing you. They've got their own ships, and seeing if maybe out of all this disaster you can salvage something for your city. It's quite a desperate situation. You've got the armor you're standing, and your sword, and a backpack with a couple of things in, and that's it. And that's the start. So that's the opening premise. Very obviously, we're in the realm of high fantasy RPG here. Just to mention, those of you who have got both Last Stand at Kirrinbahr and Argor, which is my role-playing game, statistically, that's not many of you, I'm guessing. But anyway, if you have got both, you may be a little confused because there are names that crop up in both. Kellandorn is a city in Argor. The Darklands are a continent in Argor. The Skaturish are a race in Argor. There's no real direct link. This is not taking place in the Argor game world. I think a lot of these ideas were me thinking out loud in Last Stand at Kirrinbahr, and these ideas would come to fruition a good few years later in Argor. So yes, they've got the same sort of names, but don't regard this as part of the Argor game world. There, glad we got that settled. Okay, that's the prologue then. Let's have a look at the character sheet. There we have the character sheet. If you are familiar with fighting fantasy, this will look very familiar to you. So you've got standard fighting fantasy ratings there of combat, health, karma, look. I call it karma in this version. In addition to that, I created 4 special attributes: agility, stealth, engineering, and diplomacy. I have given you 30 points to spend amongst them as you will. The higher, the better the skill. How you do that is up to you. There's no right or wrong answer. It just gives me an opportunity during the game to have some options that aren't all about combat, and some ways of resolving things that aren't just about hitting people with a piece of metal. What you choose and how you choose to use it could really define how you approach the game, and will probably have some impact on the outcome as well. So whilst there's no right or wrong answer, it's worth giving it a little bit of thought as to what sort of approach you want to take to this game. Are you going to be a smooth talker, in which case, go for diplomacy? Are you going to be really good at fixing things if you have to fix something and go for engineering? Are you, are you sneaky? Go for stealth. Think of the sort of character you want to play, really. And you've got a little bit of leeway there to design your character. If you are familiar with the fighting fantasy, that is the only difference between that and the standard fighting fantasy rules. If you're not familiar with fighting fantasy, the full rules are given in Last Stand in Kirrinbahr, and they're very simple. It's just 4 pages. It's a very simple rule system. All you need is 2d6 and a pencil, and you're good to go. Okay, moving further down the character sheet there, you've got the equipment list. Starts out quite minimal, hasn't got much at all. And if I can just get this to hopefully scroll now. Oh, I can. Brilliant. I've then got some sections which will help you in adventure. A little grid there to record the entry numbers of the locations you visited. In this game, the rooms do not magically reset. So if you go into a room and there's 5 orcs and you fight 5 orcs and kill them, and you walk out of that room and then come back later, there's not 5 orcs waiting to fight you. There's just 5 dead orcs, and that's it. So to make sure you don't end up fighting battles twice, then or picking up items twice, then just log where you've been. And then if you go into a room and think, oh, was I here before? Room 111? Oh, yes, I was. You can refer to the locations visited grid and say, yeah, I've been here before. Okay, I don't need to fight this battle again. Also, some encounter boxes, again, just to make your life a bit easier. Rather than flick between the stats, wherever they are, for whoever you're fighting in the game book and your character sheet, you can just jot down what you need for combat here, which is the enemy's combat and health. And then you can resolve that just looking at your character sheet. Not necessary, just thought it might make life a little bit easier. Also not necessary, but I think I would highly recommend it, is mapping it out as you go. A couple of the reviews that really stated they got a lot out of this game said that was helped by mapping as they went, and they found that one of the most enjoyable parts of the game. And it will help you a great deal, particularly as you, in a moment we'll look at a map of the island. As you enter the castle, your character enters the castle, as you work out the shape of the castle and the bits you've been to and the bits you've not been to, the map will be really, really useful. So I would strongly recommend that you map as you go. Okay, that's the character sheet. Let's now have a look at the island of Kirrinbahr. There we go. So, how do you know so much about this island when you just sailed up to it in your sinking ship? You're a very well-educated officer, the Guard of Kellandorn, and you remember something about this from something you've read, some dusty old manuscript you read years ago. Yeah, this is the island that the old empire had an outpost on, and when the empire fell, all contact with it was lost, and it's been cut off from civilization ever since. And from what you recall, there's the main part of the island, and there's only 2 places you can land on it. There's a little harbour called the Haven, which is on a little islet connected by an isthmus, very narrow isthmus, and there's a beach. Now, when you were holding the island, if you wanted to hold the island, holding the Haven against an attack that landed at the Haven is not a problem, because this is such a narrow isthmus, you can't really get many attackers across it, and it won't take many people to hold it. The beach is a different matter. Nice wide beach, different ways off it. Yeah, how do you defend the island against a landing on the beach? Well, you stick a castle on the headland, and you equip that castle with a weapon that can engage ships. Now, wouldn't that be useful if that weapon is still there and still working, as you're being pursued by a bunch of Skatoorish ships? Yes, it would, is the answer. It'd be very useful. The rest of the island is mostly forested, and there's a little clearing in the middle with a bell tower. Now, the text makes it quite clear this is not a friendly island. There's wild animals, there's plants that will want to kill you, there's orcs, there's renegades. It's not a great place for a last stand, but you've got to work with what you've got to work with, haven't you? So that's the island of Kirrinbahr. During the course of this adventure, your character will be mostly tasked with clearing this castle, actually taking this castle and trying to find a way to stop the majority of the Skatoorish ships that are pursuing you. If you survive the castle, you'll then get to leave the castle and look at the rest of the island, and you'll meet up and find out what's happened to your colleagues who had different jobs to do in defending the island. You'll find that out at the end if you survive that long. There's quite a nice plot to the finish of the story, and that's been commented on by a couple of reviewers. So I won't say too much, just other than to say I'm pleased with how the story finishes, and I think it finishes in a suitably epic manner. Okay, that's the island of Kirrinbahr, where the action takes place. Let's have a look now at the first entry, and this gives you an idea of. Just find where to put it. There we go. This gives you an idea, really, of the structure of the book. There's about 136 entries, I think, not including this one. This is like entry 0. I think it's about 136. There's also some maps which act as entries effectively, but eight maps. So it's not huge. It's not a really big solo game, but it's a good size. I think it'll probably keep you busy for a few hours. And because you've got that option of trying different special attributes, it might be worth you replaying again with a different set of attributes just to see if you do any better. Okay, here's the format of it. Description, a very simplistic map. If there's anything in the room, it'll be shown on the map. If there's a prospect of combat, you'll got the details of who or what you'll be fighting, and at the end it'll tell you if you survive that room where you go next, or your options for where you go next. In this case, you'll see straight away, first entry, there's a chance to use those special attributes. You've got the chance to use your agility or your stealth to either run past this whiplash orchid or sneak past it, or old-fashioned approach, if you want, try and chop it to pieces with your sword and go into combat. Like I say, it gives you options. I should mention here, this was my first ever game product, and this was done in whatever version of Word was current in 2006. It's pretty basic in terms of presentation, so that's a map of a room. That's as good as they get. There are little bits of artwork here and there. I tried a few sketches, but I'm not a great artist, and I found some copyright-free stuff which I felt was in keeping with the game. I'll be honest, it's a fairly basic presentation, but I hope people buy it and enjoy it for the content rather than the presentation. If you buy it for presentation, you will be disappointed, but I think if you buy it for the content, you won't be. So that is the first entry, and you can see it tells you if you leave that room to go to a map. And so I'll show you one of the maps and explain why there are maps instead of entries for this particular thing. So, sorry, bear with me. There we go. Let's go to that one and let's get the map. Okay, so this is map number 1. And I use maps because I feel it's a real waste of time writing, and certainly a waste of time you reading endless descriptions of you are in a corridor and there's 3 doors in the south wall and there's 1 door in the north wall and it's blocked by rubble to the east, and to the west it disappears around the corner into darkness. And then every time you walk in that corridor you've got to read that. I thought, oh well, why don't we just give you a map, you know? So when you first enter the corridor, you're directed to the map. You get that map, and from there on, you just decide which entry you're going to go for, depending which door you're going. So if you're going through that door there, you go to entry 111. If you're going to that door there, 104. If you're going to that door in the corner, entry 1. If you're going to stand around the corner and have a look and see what's around the corner, then the instructions tell you, well, go and get map 2 then and look at what's around that corner to the north. And you keep those maps out, and it's a bit more intuitive, and I just think it makes the game flow a lot better than lots of repetitive texts describing corridors. So that's the map. If you combine these maps with your own mapping attempts, you should end up with a fairly accurate picture of where you are in the castle, and a fairly accurate map to help you with that, which I think is going to really help you in this adventure. Help you quite a bit. Okay. That's about it, really. Like I say, 136-ish entries. There's a number of outcomes that can happen. It's got some good reviews. I've been really pleased with the reviews it got over the years. I wrote this really for the love of it. I had really no intention of creating a games company at the time. And by the way, if you are intending to create your own games company and maybe make a little bit of money at the hobby, maybe don't think of solo rogue game books as the way to go, because it's a lot of work. I mean, these days you can Google it and you can find a number of providers of free software that will allow you to structure the game, and also they'll keep track of where your entries are, and they'll disperse your entries around the text nicely for you. But you'll still have to play test the heck out of it, because there's always something unforeseen that happens, and there's always some mistake you've made. So a lot of play testing. Make sure you get other people to play test it for you. And when you've done all that, it's quite a niche market. let's face it, it's a niche market. So you ain't going to get rich. Well, I'm certainly haven't got rich doing this. But you're certainly not going to get rich doing game books. I've not revisited it largely because it is a lot of effort. We did a small one for Argo as part of the rules for that, but really, I've not done another one. But I will do one day. It is fun. If you're going to do it for fun, because they are fun to create and then sit back and feel, yeah, I made that, and hopefully if people like it, you get some nice reviews in. That's very satisfying. So you can get it from wargamedownloads.com or drivethroughrpg.com for $6.95. That's US dollars. Or you can get it from Lulu. Lulu you can get as a download, or you can actually buy it as a book. I'll not give you the Lulu prices because they vary quite a bit. I tweak those. They're in pound sterling, so I tweak those in line with the exchange rate. And also how much you pay for the book will depend on the delivery options, where you are in the world, and what delivery option you pay for. Because obviously you've got to pay for delivery on top of the actual production of the book. So I won't give you those prices because they're going to fluctuate. But check out my game front, my shop front of my games at lulu.com, and you'll see the prices there. Don't take my word for it. It has, as I mentioned, over the years got some nice reviews. Let me try and find some links which I think might be useful to you. First one is, here we go, Batreps. So Batreps is a site run by a guy called Alexander Sharanach. I think that's how you pronounce it. Sorry, Alexander, if I got that wrong. And he plays through games, particularly games that can be played solo, which obviously a solo game book, well, clues in the name, is an example of. So he's played through a lot of these games and reviews them in quite a bit of depth. And he adds sort of nice photos to illustrate his reviews as well. Which means I should warn you, he's got quite a good map of the game there on his website, and he's got a photograph of it, and it looks pretty accurate to me. I don't think there's anything in it that really gives away the game particularly, but you might want to not look at his map too closely if you're thinking of, if you've not played this game yet. Just read the review and skip the photo as best you can. Great site, if you're not interested in Kirrinbahr in particular, go and read it for the other stuff he's done, which is very varied. And another site which is specifically aimed at solo game books is gamebooks.org. It's run by a guy called Demian. I don't know how you pronounce that, but that's how it's spelled anyway. And it's really comprehensive. I doubt there's any game book, certainly in the English language, that's not listed there. It's really, really comprehensive. So have a look at it. It's a great site if you're interested in game books, and a lot of those game books have been reviewed, and Last Stand has been reviewed. And that link there will take you to where Last Stand was reviewed. I'll put these links in the comments section below, so hopefully you can just click on those and go straight there. That's about it, really. Hope this has been interesting to you. If you've got Last Stand at Kirrinbahr, then do feel free to comment about it, and don't give away the end, but comments welcome. If you're interested in it, do please go ahead and buy it. I'd be very, very grateful if you did. And thanks for watching, and do feel free to subscribe. Thank you very much, and goodbye.